Andy Brown, and I am 10 years old. Last summer I visited a farm. I had a lot of fun there, and I'd like to tell you about it. Do you see the house and the barns there in the picture? Well, they belong to my Uncle Bill, and that's where I was last summer. My uncle has a big farm and raises lots of corn and oats and soybeans. He has a lot of animals, too, hogs, sheep, chickens, and cattle. The farm sure is an interesting place. There I am with Uncle Bill. We were taking a tour of the farm just after I arrived from town, and he was telling me a little bit about the place. I guess I was more interested in the animals than anything else, and I learned a lot about how important they are. My job was to take care of them, and that's where I learned how important it is to raise healthy animal babies. Sometimes taking care of the animals was hard work, but I really liked it. My first job in the morning was doing the chicken chores while Uncle Bill took care of the milking. I didn't have to get up quite as early as he did, but I did have to get a good start in the day, especially in the summertime when there was a lot of field work to be done. So every morning after breakfast, I went down to the laying house and collected the eggs and fed the chickens. I had to feed them twice a day to be sure that they got plenty of water. Uncle Bill always sold his eggs to the hatchery, and it was very important that everything be just right. He has several hundred laying hens, and he wanted me to be sure and take good care of them. I gathered the eggs 3 times a day and put them down in the cellar to keep them cool until the eggman came to collect them. One afternoon, Uncle Bill and I went down to the barn to see some new litters of pigs. He was real nice about telling and explaining things to me. I guess he just wanted to be sure I understood everything. 2 sows were just farrowing, and I was to help cut and disinfect the navel cords. When a sow has a new litter, they say she is farrowed, and Uncle Bill had built farrowing crates for his sows. The crates were made so the mother can get up or lie down, but she can't accidentally lie down on any one of her babies. And the heat lamp that hangs down between the crates attracts the baby pigs to it by its warmth, and they only have to go to the mother to feed. Of all the farm animals, I think I like working with the animal babies the best. So I asked Uncle Bill what he thought was the most important thing in taking care of these young animals.
Well, Andy, you're asking me a pretty big question. What do I think is the most important thing in taking care of these young animals? I don't think that I can put my finger on any one thing in particular. It's a combination of a good many things that, well, goes into making a healthy pig or cow or sheep. Take the pigs we were looking at, for instance. Cute, weren't they? And healthy, too. But they just didn't get that way without a little help from me, you know. First, you've got to have good parents, a good sow and a good boar. And you've got to be sure that they've been blood tested and that they're disease-free. And if you breed the best of the best, chances are you'll get a good litter. You've got to take good care of the mother before she farrows. Got to be sure that she gets the proper diet and that she's kept clean. And that, well, she's given the right amount of exercise. And then you say, do you remember that nursery rhyme that goes something like this? This little piggy went to market, this little piggy stayed home, this little piggy had roast beef, and this little piggy had none. This little piggy cried wee-wee all the way home. You know, I've often thought that, well, that kind of fits this pig-raising business pretty well. That first little piggy went to market must have been a real well-brought-up little pig. I'll bet he had a healthy mother, and, well, he got good food all the way along the line. I'll bet that pig that ate roast beef also got very good treatment. And it doesn't say whether he made it to the market or not. That little pig who stayed home must have been good and healthy, too. He was probably used for breeding. But I really feel sorry for that little fella who got none. His dinner just, well, his owner mustn't have taken care of him or ever given him his dinner. Oh, he was probably of the run of the litter along with the little pig who cried all the way home. And you know, Andy, this little rhyme can pretty well apply to caring for all young animals. not just these little pigs. Animal babies are, well, a lot like human babies. They need to be given the proper care and treatment, too.
One sure thing, my uncle's dairy calves always got good care. I know, I gave it to them. That was another one of my jobs. I had to clean out their stalls and feed them. And Uncle Bill kept telling me how very important it is for young calves to be fed properly because so many of them die in the early months of life from digestive trouble. They can pick up diseases from dirty pens and feeding pails, so every day I had to scrub out the milk pails and clean out their stalls and feed boxes. At first the calves were very shy and wouldn't come anywhere near me, but when they got used to me working around in their stalls, they became very friendly. Uncle Bill has about 20 dairy cows, and they calve at different times of the year so that not all of them are dry at the same time. A few days after birth, Uncle Bill weans the calf and feeds the milk from a pail so that he can use the mother's milk for market. He then gives it a dry food mixture to build it up and give it the best possible start in life. The only animal babies that I didn't get a chance to work with were the baby chicks because they aren't hatched on the farm anymore. Nowadays, commercial hatcheries can hatch so many more eggs than the hens can that it just isn't practical to try to hatch them on the farm. What's most important is that the eggs that are hatched at the hatchery come from disease-free flocks. Uncle Bill just places his order for a certain number of chicks with the hatchery, and they're delivered to him within 24 hours after they are hatched. It takes 21 days to hatch the eggs in incubators and hatchers, the same amount of time that it would take the hens to hatch them. But it is so much safer in the hatchery. One day the veterinarian came out to the farm. Uncle Bill had called him out to look over some of the baby pigs. He thought that they might be coming down with something. Dr. Jones knows Uncle Bill and his farm very well. He comes out every time Uncle Bill thinks there might be something wrong with any one of his animals. This was my first time to see and talk with a real veterinarian, and I stayed right with him and Uncle Bill the whole afternoon. They talked about a lot of things I didn't understand, but Dr. Jones was sort of like my uncle, and he would explain things to me when he thought I was wondering about some of his big words. One thing I found out for sure, the veterinarian is just as important to the farmer and his animals as the physician is to human beings. After Dr. Jones got his coveralls and boots on, we took him down to the field where some of the larger pigs were eating. These pigs were about 3 or 4 months old then. The heaviest must have weighed over 100 pounds. You can just imagine what they must have weighed at 6 months. Uncle Bill said that they weighed around 200 pounds when they went to market. When they saw us coming, they scattered every which way. Then they came back to eat as we walked away from them. Uncle Bill let them roam around the field, but a couple of months later he put them in the feedlot so they wouldn't get too much exercise. And he started fattening them up for market. Then we went down into the barn so that Dr. Jones could take a look at the new litters. He looked them over and gave them an injection of some kind of serum as a preventive measure. Dr. Jones said it is always better to be on the safe side. Later, we went down to the pasture to look over some sheep. On the way back, I asked him the reason why so many animal babies die.
Well, Andy, animal babies die for the same reasons that human babies sometimes die. One of the biggest difficulties is infection. Now, infections are of several different kinds. Sometimes the infection is just in one animal and doesn't spread to other animals, but sometimes we have what are called contagious diseases that will spread rapidly from one animal to another, and the first thing we know, the whole group is sick. Those, of course, are very serious diseases. Now, another type of disease that we have to consider is that may be transmitted from animals to man. For instance, you may have heard of tuberculosis in cows. That's a disease that can be transmitted to man. So you can see that it's necessary that when we treat an animal, that we treat them not just for the sake of the animal, but also for the sake of man. Modern science has given us many advances in drugs that we can use to treat diseases and methods to prevent them, too. Let's take, for instance, serums and vaccines. Those are materials that can be used to immunize these little animals so that they will not contract an infection when it happens to come along. Then the modern drugs, such as the antibiotics and the sulfonamides, can be used very effectively to treat some of those same infections. We also can use food supplements, which are very important in that they prevent deficiency diseases, particularly in young animals also. But most important of all, we must remember that in order to treat these infections effectively, they must be treated early. And to treat them early, the veterinarian must be contacted so that he can make his diagnosis and begin his treatment in time.
Yes, Andy, animal babies are much like human babies. They don't just grow like Topsy. The farmer who is really interested in making a business of farm life wants his animals to be healthy animals. He wants them to reflect the time and expense he has put into them when they represent him in the market or at the auction. He has seen them come to life, has kept them clean, fed them properly, and they're a part of his life's work, but they aren't worth very much unless they are healthy creatures. The veterinarian, with his knowledge of the preventive medicines, the serums and drugs used in the treatment of diseases, can really help the farmer raise the healthy and disease-free animals that he desires. The household pets to which we become so attached also need the same good care and management that the farm animals require. Millions of dollars are spent each year on purchasing pets of all kinds, but many people fail to realize that young pups and kittens and birds require care, clean shelters, proper food. If you're going to have a pet, you must be willing to take care of it. Give it the proper food, keep it clean, see that it gets plenty of exercise. Keep it free from disease by seeing that it receives the proper veterinary care and that it receives the proper vaccinations at the prescribed ages. Yes, animals are wonderful creatures. Andy spent a summer on a farm and learned just how wonderful they are. He learned how to take care of them in a first-hand way. Not all of us can have this experience in caring for farm animals, but we can learn to care properly for the animal pets that we own. The human baby is a helpless, wholly dependent creature during the first few years of its life. It needs a proper diet to ensure the development of strong bones and healthy tissue. It needs to be kept clean and given love and affection. So it is with all young creatures. While most animal babies develop more rapidly than the human baby, the first few months of life is just as critical a period for them as is the first year of life for the human baby. They are dependent on their owners, be they farm animals or household pets, to give them the proper care essential for their growth and development.